Hi readers, Mrs. Malstadt here. Thanks for joining me again today. Yesterday we took a look at the Aesop fable, The Dog and His Bone, and we thought about the plot or the actions that happen in the story, and then we also thought about how those character actions can help us think about the theme. So yesterday in The Dog and the Bone, we read that Dog was carrying a bone over a bridge, and as he looked into the water, he saw his own reflection, but he didn't realize it was his reflection. And he became jealous of what he thought was a bigger and juicier bone in the mouth of another dog. So he thought that if he could bark as loud as he could, then maybe he would scare that other dog into dropping the bone, and then he could have it for himself. Well, we know what happened. The dog barked, he dropped the bone, and the bone fell into the river, leaving him with nothing. So today we're going to think about how we can use actions from different stories we read to determine the theme, but we're also going to think about how we can compare themes across different stories. Sometimes if you're reading a book in a series or in similar genres like fables, sometimes there's themes or lessons that we learn across both books that are similar. So I've created a Venn diagram here to compare to see what's the same in the themes or lessons across The Fox and the Crow and The Dog and His Bone. And then in this Venn diagram, we can also contrast and see what's different. So if you recall from The Fox and the Crow, the fox was giving lots of compliments to the crow. And the crow got so flattered that she decided to show off with her singing, ending up dropping the cheese that was in her mouth, and the fox was able to grab it for himself. So based on the actions of the fox and the crow, one lesson that we talked about earlier this week was don't trust everything you hear. Another lesson that we learned was to think before you act. If the crow had thought harder about the cheese in her mouth and thought, well, if I sing, I'm going to open my mouth and drop it, if she had thought, then maybe she wouldn't have dropped it. And then yesterday when we talked about the dog and his bone, we thought about what the character learned based on his actions, and we try to say it like a lesson that anybody could learn, not just from that one story. And so one lesson that we learned is that if you're greedy, you may lose everything. And another lesson was be happy with what you have. So now when I'm thinking about these lessons that these characters learned that they could teach us side by side, I'm wondering, are there any lessons, maybe even from the ones that we've already come up with, that could fit with both of the books? So give it a try. Go ahead and read through them and see. Is there a lesson that we could learn from both of these that are the same? So let's think through it. Don't trust everything you hear. Well, I feel like that relates directly to The Fox and the Crow, because there were two characters and the fox was speaking to the crow and flattering the crow to try and trick her. But in The Dog and His Bone, it was just the dog by himself, and he wasn't really trying to talk somebody into something, or he wasn't, having a conversation, and nobody spoke to him. So probably not that one. What about think before you act? So in The Fox and the Crow, we discussed how if the crow had thought about, singing and what that would do to the cheese in her mouth, then she wouldn't have dropped the cheese. Let's see if we can apply that to The Dog and His Bone. So if the dog had thought, maybe I should be happy with what I have, or, I don't want to try and scare the other dog, or maybe that wouldn't be a nice thing to do. If he had thought about it, then he wouldn't have lost his bone either. So I'm thinking that this is a theme that goes across both of our Aesop fables. So readers, as you're thinking across multiple books, you can use some ideas from one theme and lessons that are learned to help you think of other things across different stories. So remember, as you're going through and you're reading your books today during independent reading, be thinking about those themes. What's the story really about? And what does the author leave us thinking about? So as you go off today, I invite you to give that a try. Think about those lessons that the author's teaching us through the characters' actions. Happy reading!